Scott? Scott?
Scott, buddy, you gotta tell me. Why do you keep telling us the Into the Pit story? What is so important about Into the Pit that you've told it to us 3 separate times now? Welcome back to another Five Nights at Freddy's theory, and today we're returning to the pit in order to figure out why Scott is so obsessed with this story in particular. So now I need to be obsessed with this story because I need to figure out what Scott put into this story that wasn't in the original story a few years ago and wasn't in the game from literally 6 months ago. So do the differences in this story make it more or less canon to the game's timeline than the original 2 stories that we've already received with the same name? Because there are differences in this story, simple ones, and I'm not talking about you getting different options that weren't even available in the original story. I'm saying that Oswald likes Coke in this book, but in the original one that we received and in the game, he likes orange soda. So does that mean that this one is not the canon one and we only need to worry about this one? Or is this the one that we need to get rid of because it's driving me nuts? So let's for a second assume that that is what Scott wants, that Into the Pit is getting put into the game's timeline. Specifically, the Return to the Pit version is getting put into the game's timeline. Where exactly does Return to the Pit fit into the timeline? Now, if we were going to put either of the other 2 versions of Into the Pit on the timeline, we wouldn't really have a solid place to put them, but we'd say somewhere maybe close to the early 2000s due to some of the technology of the time being shown. Like in the game, we see this type of phone, which has actual number buttons that you can push, rather than your average smartphone that has a screen on it. Again, we can't concretely put those 2 stories in that part of the timeline because Oswald's family is said to be very poor. They can't really afford modern luxuries like a smartphone. But in the newest version of Into the Pit, that changes on literally 1 page. You see, what it seems like Return to the Pit is doing whenever it gives you options sometimes is that they're trying to hide small lore tidbits in pages that are very similar to one another. For example, whenever you get the option to choose your prize, you are given 2 very identical pages to one another whenever you choose between the bunny ears and the flashlight. But one of these pages in particular gives us a very solid date range that we can use to figure out when Oswald is originally from. Let me just read you the differences that I found between these 2 pages. On page 40, whenever you choose to get the bunny ears, you are given this. Dude, that's like from 3 years ago. You need to seriously get out more. Do they not have movie theaters where you're from? Sure they do. They also have Netflix and YouTube, but you can't tell them that. But on page 105, the one that gives us the solid evidence of where Oswald's from in the timeline, we're given this. Sure they do. They also have Netflix and YouTube and TikTok. But you can't tell them that, of course. Oswald is from modern day. Oswald knowing about TikTok means that at the earliest, he can come from the year 2018, because that's the year that TikTok was released to the United States, sometime within the past 7 years. More interestingly, the original Into the Pit story was made in 2019. I think this might be a good year that we can estimate where Oswald's from, but realistically, he could go from anywhere from 2018 to 2024. And I'm saying 2024 for one specific reason. There is a point in the story where Oswald is able to leave the pizzeria back in 1985, but when he does so, him and everything around him begins to age really quickly to the point that he reaches modern day, but he's changed. Quote from page 117. You see a reflection of yourself in the window. Your hair has flecks of gray, and your hairline is so far up your forehead, it's basically at the back of your head. Your face is lined. It hits you hard then. Not only has the world around you aged, but so have you. You are now old, like in your 40s. Now, could this just be Oswald not able to recognize how old he actually is by looking in a reflection of himself? Of course it could be, but the fact that they don't give us the option of 50s by saying 40s or 50s leads me to believe that Oswald is somewhere in the center of his 40s, which absolutely cuts off this year, 2025, because that puts him at 50 exactly. If Oswald is originally from 2018 and he ages forward, he would become 43, which puts him in his mid-40s, which would allow for Oswald to more easily identify that he is indeed in his 40s. Because if Oswald is off by a year or two and he's in his mid-40s, he's still in his 40s, unlike if he were closer to, let's say, 40 exactly, or 49. If he's off by a year or two, he might say that he's closer to his 30s or 40s, or 40s or 50s. And like I said earlier, the original Into the Pit story was made back in 2019. And if Return to the Pit is supposed to be an updated version of Into the Pit, and it's supposed to take place after 2019, then this should have a current event that is not mentioned, which is interesting because Oswald's mom is a nurse. He doesn't mention the pandemic at all. Now that means that Return to the Pit takes place in 2018 or 2019, after where a lot of people believe FNAF 3 takes place due to the survival guidebook. This book contains coupons that some people have used in order to find inflation rates, and if you use those inflation rates to try and figure out where FNAF 3 takes place, you get somewhere close to 2015. The thing is, I don't think this can happen because Return to the Pit has an entire branching option that you can choose from that allows Oswald to play an 8-bit minigame that allows him to basically do Happiest Day. It's basically this book's version of New Game Plus, where VIP had the mask system where once you put the mask on, you start back at the beginning and multiply all the scores you get in every game you play. And the week before has you start from the beginning and you get the secret item, which is just a phone, which allows you to call other phones around the restaurant and leave night messages for the next night guard. This book has you collect a golden token, which allows you to play a specific arcade cabinet in the arcade back in 1985. This then causes Oswald to get sucked into the arcade cabinet, causing him to turn into an 8-bit version of himself, standing in an 8-bit version of Freddy's, which allows him to then find the missing kids from the missing children's incident and save them by bringing them to a table of cake and serving them each cake. Oswald is then sucked out of the video game and is noticeably no longer in 1985. He is back in present day in Jeff's Pizza, standing where the ball pit used to be. The arcade cabinet, along with a few other arcade cabinets and newspaper articles sitting on the wall saying that the missing children's incident was completely avoided, are now in the ball pit's place, implying that somehow Oswald saved the missing children by playing a video game. But the thing is, if this book is implying that Oswald can complete Happiest Day, then that means that Happiest Day isn't completed by FNAF 3, which either means that we have a complete misunderstanding of FNAF 3, or this cannot happen. Like, sure, some things do seem to make a lot of sense with this, like the fact that there isn't a Freddy's location that is ever open during Oswald's lifetime as far as we're aware. There's only Fazbear Frights, which wasn't really opened as far as I'm aware. It burnt down the week that they were getting ready to get it opened. So Oswald would have never known what the animatronics were, so that's why he is able to draw them without actually knowing who they are. If Oswald is able to cause Happiest Day in 2018, that means one of three things is happening here. Either FNAF 3 doesn't take place in 2015 like we thought, Happiest Day doesn't get completed in FNAF 3, or FNAF 3's Happiest Day isn't effective, which would make me think that Oswald's isn't effective either, but his seems to be super effective because whenever he returns back to present day, it seems like the entire timeline has changed. And no, I still don't think this means that the ball pit is actually doing time travel. I think this is some sort of weird FNAF world thing where everything that happens out there affects in here, and vice versa. Oswald even seems to imply it somewhat in this book where he says that the town feels like it's seeping into him, and that could just be the negative energy that's seeping out of the ball pit into the town and even into him. So whenever he affects something in the ball pit, it seems to affect the entire town. I hate to say it, but I don't think we could put Return to the Pit into the game's timeline. I know I've been trying to do it for the past about 10 minutes now, but it just doesn't seem to be able to fit with the Happiest Day ending. Now, maybe everything else in this book is canon. After all, the Happiest Day ending is classified as a secret ending in the book, something that I don't think the other two interactive novels have given us. But it just doesn't seem right to say that part of the book is canon, but the other part of the book isn't. So that just begs the question even further. why did we get a third adaptation for Into the Pit? What is Scott trying to convey in this story that we didn't get from the first two that we've received? I know somebody is going to get mad at me for the next words that come out of my mouth, but there are 6 kids in the missing children's incident. I know, it doesn't seem like it at first, but Scott has went out of his way to give us 6 kids in this book, and I'll tell you how. I know it doesn't seem like that there are 6 because in the book there is a way that you can find the missing children, and whenever Oswald enters the room, he notices that there are 5 kids, but that is only one path that you can take in order to get to that room. There is a completely separate path that you can take on the very first time that you enter 1985, where you can follow the yellow rabbit to the back room, and Oswald notices one dead kid, all by himself, before, of course, he becomes a dead kid. This happens on the very first visit to 1985. It is almost the first option given to us whenever we reach 1985. You climb out of the ball pit, you bump into Chip, you make friends with him, you see the yellow rabbit, you follow it to the back room, and you find a dead kid. Oswald visits 1985 3 times, and on the first day you find 1 kid, and on the third day, everyone finds 5 kids. And some of you are probably saying that this is probably just the first kid of the missing children's incident. This is most likely Susie that we find in the back room. And you're wrong, and I can prove it. Later in the book, you are given the option to once again follow the yellow rabbit, but once you do so, you can snap out of whatever trance that he has put you into, and you can actually stop the rabbit before the missing children's incident occurred, because you can kick him over, and then he just convulses on the ground and dies. And once you try and get back to the ball pit in order to return to your own time, there is no ball pit. It's just a table with kids eating cake, like Happiest Day. Without the rabbit present on the day of the missing children's incident, the kids are able to have their happiest day without dying. They're able to eat their cake and still live. Sadly, Oswald does get stuck in 1985 whenever he does this, but it shows that that singular kid that we find on day 1 is separate from the original 5 that we know of. And of course, this makes a lot of sense from the little bit of information that we know about this theoretical 6th kid. If you don't believe that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, you believe that this 6th kid is the one you should not have killed. And the one you should not have killed is not going to want to participate in Happiest Day. They want revenge. They are going to make sure that William suffers. Now, who exactly is this 6th kid that's been teased to us since 2019? And I don't know, ask another theorist. I'm sure it's like Andrew or something. This book is a lot to worry about. I don't know, man. And with that, I'm gonna leave this video here. I know you guys probably have a lot to say, and that's what the comment section is for. So don't forget to leave a comment down below on what you think. And of course, if you like the video, hit the like button and hit the subscribe if you want to see more of my content in the future. Thanks for watching to the very end, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!